Welcome to KnotWork Myth and Storytelling. This is the show where ancestral wisdom meets the modern imagination. I'm your host and lead storyteller, Marisa Gowdy. I'm a myth worker, a story healer, and a writing coach. I'm the author of The Sovereignty Knot, A Woman's Way to Freedom, Power, Love, and Magic, and the founder of the Writer's Knot and Author's Knot communities. On KnotWork, we explore the mythology and folklore of Ireland and beyond. Whether you're drawn to Celtic culture and the power of the landscape, or whether you just like a good story and expansive conversation, you're in the right place. Fulcha. If you love what you hear and want to support the show, I'd be so grateful if you become a paid subscriber to my Myth is Medicine newsletter over on Substack. Look for the link at the top of the show notes or visit mythismedicine.substack.com. Before we explore this week's story, I have a question for you. What about your stories? Whether it's a book project that wants to be birthed, deep, authentic writing to support your business, or a personal creative project you can't quite name yet, I'm here to support you through the entire writing process, from the initial ideation stage to the crafting of narrative and beyond. If you're ready to write memoir, or a chronicle of the spiritual journey, or a book that explores healing, nature, and the power of imagination, as well as the toughest truths of today, call on me. I walk beside you as you uncover the story that only you can tell. I'm a confidant who supports you through the challenges, and I'm your champion who will offer the nudges you need to get the words on the page. And yes, we hold space for the mythical and the magical all along the way. Visit my website, marisagowdy.com, to learn more about my writing coaching services and set up a free 30-minute consultation. Season 6, Episode 9, A Woman's Quest for Knowledge, Boan's Tears by Ali Isaac. Our guest is Ali Isaac. She lives in Ireland with her husband, 2 sons, and daughter Carys. She graduated from Maynooth University as a very mature student in 2019 with a degree in English and history and a special interest in Irish cultural heritage. She followed this with a Master of Arts degree in English Literatures of Engagement. BC, before children, Ali worked in retail management with a short spell in the military. AD, after degrees, she worked as an education officer in her local county museum. But at heart, Ali is a writer. She's been blogging about Irish mythology since 2012 and now is the founder of Hag on Substack, a newsletter that braids female senescence with landscape, natural, archaeological, and mythical. Her writing has been published in Irish literary journals, The Stinging Fly, Sonder, Paper Lanterns, and Catatonic Daughters. In 2020, she was awarded a mentorship with author Sarah Baum by Words Ireland in conjunction with the Arts Council of Ireland. She was also selected for the Penguin Right Now program. In 2021, she was the recipient of a Literature Bursary Award from the Arts Council of Ireland. Her first book, Imperfect Bodies, will be published by Heloise Press in March of 2026. I am so happy to welcome Ali to the podcast today. As is our way on KnotWork Myth and Storytelling, we begin with the story. And so, I'll ask you, Ali, will you tell us the story today?
Yes, I'm going to tell you the story of Boan. The pool is silent and dark, reflecting neither sky nor earth, an upwelling of water from the deepest reaches of the other world, bringing with it all the arcane knowledge and mysteries contained within. The surface is flat, glossy like dark enamel, polished like my bronze mirror. That mirror shows me more than a pretty face, though, as will, I hope, this small sheet of water. Around the edge, like curls framing a woman's face, stand the 9 ancient hazels of knowledge. My breath catches as I gaze at them. The rumours are true. Their branches are indeed laden with blossom, fruit, and leaf all at once. As I stand transfixed, nuts fall into the shaded water with a hushed splash, and the 5 spotted salmon which reside there rise up gently to eat them. Debilla, my little dog, forgets her unease and rushes down the steep bank, yapping at the benign creatures with loud excitement. But they just flip their tails at her and sink back down to safety. The air is so still, so silent and cold that the sound of my breath unfurling from my lungs rattles loud as a boran in my ears. The mist that has followed me here is winding through the trees, stealing between the trunks on long, thin legs and fingers. The well sees all but throws back nothing. Deep within, a thick soup of knowledge gathers through the swirling senses, emotions, and calculations of the myriad minds, all living things since life began. I have such a thirst. Just one drop could teach me so much. Just one tiny droplet caught and spun like a crystal bead on a dipped finger, trickled onto the tip of my tongue. Knowledge, says Nectan, must be earned. It takes as much sweat and toil as that of a man clearing the plain and bringing forth crops from the soil. Well, I have never seen so much as a single bead of sweat break out upon his brow, and we have been married many a year. It seems to me that Nectar likes to keep all this knowledge for himself. The storytellers call me a goddess, yet they limit me as they limit their mortal flesh and blood women. They credit me with the birth of the mighty River Boyne, then give me my death in its foamy rushing waters. I bring forth life in a salty flood of water, the sum of my worth in a man's world. But when the crone years descend upon me, who will honour me then? I came to Ireland long ago with my people, the Tuatha Dé Danann. We were looking for a land to call our own, somewhere we could settle and live a good life. We found it here on this small western isle, bathed in mists and washed on all sides by the ninth wave of Manannan, its outer edges spiked with black speckled cliffs, or laid with white, wide sands, or ringed with purple heather-clad mountains. In its centre, a sweeping vista of fertile valleys, low-slung hills, and everywhere the thick brown ooze of the bog. It was lush with vegetation and teemed with life. There were battles with indigenous peoples, but we were accepted in the end. I sometimes wonder, was the well of knowledge always here? Was that the real reason we came, or did Nectan call it forth from the other world with his great powers? Knowledge is power, and Nectan guards it with his life. I have tried everything. I have played the dutiful wife. I have pleaded, demanded, reasoned, and cajoled. I have wound my body around his in our bed at night, but he has remained steadfast. Boan, beloved wife, you are not ready. When the day comes, then I will take you to the well. I know the workings of my own intellect, and I declare myself ready. What qualifies you to decide for me? He tries to distract me with kisses and gifts, but I will not be placated. I begin to suspect he is lying, that he intends to keep the well for himself, that he does not trust me. I know there are special rites conducted there with Nectan's permission and under his watchful eye. I maintain a discreet observation of the comings and goings, and it soon becomes clear that the only participants are men. Deceived by my own husband. Well, I am not the first, and certainly will not be the last. But Nectan, Gramochri, love of my heart, you have wronged me, and I am aggrieved. I find my consolation in the broad muscled arms of the Dadda. I offer him wine, but drink most of it myself. I spill my woes, and the next thing I know, we are stretched out together in your bed, Nectan, and you know what? It feels good, and I have no regrets. My woman's arts tell me a child will be born, and when the doctor says this child will be special, I believe him, for he is the good God, and I trust him. He halts the sun in the sky so that the 9 months of my pregnancy pass as one day. Who would even think of such a thing? It ignites my old hunger. This is the kind of knowledge I desire. My child is delivered safe and well. I name him Aengus and give him into the arms of his father, who receives him with joy and awe. This child, he whispers, will be known as the god of love, youth, and poetic inspiration. The doctor's eyes meet mine. Thank you for this most precious gift, a child conceived in love, who is love. My son is beautiful, pink, smooth-skinned, eyes the colour of the sky, curls the colour of the sun. I press a kiss to his forehead. It wrenches my heart to let him go, but the Dadda must take him to be fostered. Now I have Nectan to deal with. I will not be put off any longer. I am Boan, daughter of Delva, not some common trollop who must do as she is told. I close my eyes and tune into the earth beneath my feet, to the hidden rivulets that flow deep underground, carrying the world's wisdom and all its memories into the deep well waters. And I follow. The path is winding and covert, but its secrets reveal themselves to me. So here I stand in this liminal space of edges, of loch and land, of knowing and unknowing. I wonder, do I drink the water, eat the salmon, or wash away my ignorance by bathing? I will drink, I decide. How will it taste? Salty like life or sweet like dreaming? How will it feel to be all-knowing? The pulse of my heart passes through me into the ground where my soft feet connect with the earth. They are bloody and bruised where they have trod upon root and thorn, furze and stone. The surface of the pool begins to tremble, stirred by my wildness. I am frightened and exhilarated in equal measure. My heart races faster and the well responds. Of course it knows me. There is so much water in womankind. The water of tears, the water of birth, the water of menstruation. It cannot fail to recognize me. It cannot contain so much knowledge and not be alive. Tell me, teach me, show me. Debilla is whining. I bend to pat her head. Hush now, be brave, my little one, just a little longer. I am undecided what to do. To receive, one must be willing to give, but what do I have that is worthy of the gift I ask? The well knows. A votive offering it demands in a bubbling, foamy voice. Cast it into my black silken body. In my eagerness, though, I have come empty-handed. Perhaps Nectar was right. I am not ready. Debilla is yapping again. I hesitate. What can I give? And then the well says, Boan, we accept your great sacrifice. You will forever be remembered in the land and in the sky. The water begins to rise and stir. Wavelets grow into watery mountains that slop at the banks that contain them. The hazel trees begin to bend and bow, whipping their branches in a wind that leaps into being out of nowhere. The mist thickens into an impenetrable wall, and daylight fades. I don't understand. I'm gripped with sudden fear, but even as I turn to run, I know escape is futile. The roaring water towers above me, streaked with white foam. It moves much faster than I. It sweeps me up as if I were no more than a feather, devouring everything in its path as it cascades down the hillside toward the call of the stormy grey ocean. It takes from me an eye, tears from me a hand, beats one foot into a pulp. Little Debilla is tossed from wave to wave like a sleeter between hurlers. The lake burst carries us out to sea, where poor Debilla is finally lost to me. The gouge in the land, made from the torrent, fills with water and calms. It nourishes the land, and they name it for me, the River Boyne. In the gush of water, I am reborn. To find me now, you must look to the sky. On a dark, clear night, you may see an echo of the Boyne flowing through the stars. A pathway known as Balakan Bofina, the way of the white cow. You may know it better as the Milky Way. From here, I look down on the world, on many worlds, and time stretches endless and everywhere, and I see so much. I have learned so much. I have more knowledge than Nectar. I have more knowledge than I could ever have dreamed of.
Allie, thank you for that gorgeous story, for taking us into the stars and into the place beyond wildest dreams. Oh, Bowen's thirst for knowledge and all that comes through it and because of it. Wow. It's such a joy to receive this story. Thank you.
You're welcome. It was a great story to write because I feel that it's kind of very relevant today, the controlling of women and the knowledge, that the power that they have. And in fact, I wanted to read it because a couple of days ago I was reading in the news about the women in STEM that were taken off the website, the NASA website. And
Right.
I was reading that and thinking, here we go again. It's it is all happening again. And I think it's something that we have to really be aware of. But I think also there's such a strong spirit of Bridget movement at the moment as well. And I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of women are really feeling that and starting to rise into their power and to feel their own strength and abilities. And I
Yeah.
think this story just shows what you can do if you're really determined. And Boan makes the ultimate sacrifice, I suppose. We
Mhm.
don't really have to do that, but we still have to dedicate ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and instantly in what you're saying, offer us the way in which the myths are relevant across time and they're also relevant across space because as you name, as you're looking at what's happening over here in US politics and the fact that, it's presumably American women working for NASA and then also knowing you're telling this story rooted in Ireland and thinking of the Bridget movement, which is there's whispers of it over here, but certainly knowing how inspirational it is to watch how it's just captured the Irish imagination and Irish women's power so
Mm,
beautifully. And it is starting to translate and flow. And my goddess, we need it right now to
yeah,
have these reminders of both we're dealing with issues at this local level and then also looking at all these global tides that could help lift us up.
yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it does. And I think, well, for the spirit of Bridget, I think has been rising for quite a while in
Mhm.
Ireland. But I think it really took off as soon as she was given that public holiday.
Yeah.
Suddenly, you see it, everyone's writing about it, everyone's
Mhm.
talking about it. More and more places are now starting to hold celebrations and events on that day. Every year, it's growing.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's great. It feels like a really positive thing,
Yes. Well,
like a real positive energy.
yes, yes. So I'm not sure if you heard the episode when Tracy O'Connor was on actually the first episode here of this season, and she had played a gorgeous role in that first creation of the petition and around creating Bridget's holiday. And then I think maybe it was 4 or 5 years later that it was, I think 2023 was the first day it became the
Yeah,
first official celebration. And I remember saying to Tracy that there was a sense that having a Bridget's Day felt so inevitable. Like, of course, now it's watching people embrace it and it just rippling across the world on Instagram and other spaces. But then when you get
yeah,
to speak to someone who was part of, being in that room that said, hey, we really need to get this done. What's our very first step? And there's just something really inspirational in that sense of these great big shifts, mostly
yeah,
for the good and sometimes for the negative, I suppose, that happen across the world began with one little glimmer. And I guess in this case, it's Bowen's looking at the well and saying, why not me? How can
yeah,
I be involved with this? How can I be part of this well of welling
yes,
up? Mm.
yes, yes. It was very interesting as well listening to Laura's story
Mhm.
because the story that was given to her was that Bridget is Boan's daughter.
Right.
So I didn't know that. So that was, new for me. And it just kind of made sense because I wrote this Boan story a good few years ago.
Right.
But I had this real strong sense of love from the Dadga towards her and towards their son. And then when I was listening to Laura's story, and she had this really powerful description of the love between them. And I just thought it was something I picked up on, that we both kind of felt that coming down through the mist for such a long time. And I also think of the Dadda as being protective of women, in that, because he was the holder of the cauldron, the cauldron of plenty, and the cauldron is a very female symbol of the womb, and that maybe that was one of his roles as a protector of women. Yeah, I just felt it was just a very powerful combination of him and Boan.
Yes. So, just to offer our listeners, in case they haven't heard Laura Murphy's past stories here on the podcast, I'll link to them in the show notes. Yes, Laura's told the story of Bridget, the rebirth of the mother, which was about Bridget's
Yes.
being the daughter of Dagda and Boan. And then Laura also told a story more focused on maybe the original tale we know of Boan as mother to Aengus. But I love the way you're calling our attention to the sense of the beautiful, healthy masculine that's held by the Dagda,
Yes.
that he's like the Joseph figure of acting as midwife for his beloved. And that contrast, because I do love how your Boan has love for her Necton. Like, she does really want her marriage to work, and she respects him and what he does. And he doesn't end up he isn't worthy of his sovereignty goddess, I suppose, in the sense
Yeah.
that he isn't
Yeah.
respecting her in the way that the Dagda can and will do. So thank you for
Yeah.
offering both senses of the masculine, which I think is both so alive in our world right now.
Yes. Yes. We need more of that, don't we? We need more of the Dagda at the
Mhm.
moment, because the masculinity is a little bit toxic around the world, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. I was having a really fascinating conversation with a client of mine. Actually, she's working on a book right now, and we were discussing the ways in which, this is hard to express. So I'm going to see if I can do this, because it's a tricky idea. Where does toxic masculinity come from? And then the
Mm,
sense that we're also in this, rolling our eyes, men, that we get into that pattern. So where does it become this sort of self-fulfilling prophecy that it's hard
yeah.
to make a Dagda in this modern age? It's hard to make an Aengus, because there's also these expectations, and the weight of just being a guy has that it isn't imbued with the care and the ability to ask the feminine to hold ask rather to ask the masculine to hold the feminine. It's not imbued in our culture, and so it keeps perpetuating that toxicity
Mm,
continues.
yeah.
And it's a tough puzzle to solve. I'm wondering what you've thought about that, if you have at all.
Well, I think that this toxic masculinity that we have is a minority,
Mm,
but it has as much as it has a detrimental effect on women, it also has a detrimental effect on men,
right.
because men are not allowed to have emotion, they're not allowed to express themselves in a way that makes men look weak. And so to survive, they have to put on this masculine act as well.
Mm,
And they have to find some strength, I guess, just like women have.
yeah.
We've talked a little bit about how the spirit of Bridget is sweeping across women in Ireland. So that's maybe how women in Ireland are starting to feel some strength. But then, to be honest, that's been happening for a while now. When you think of things like repeal the eighth, so that has been building, and the female power has been building and building and building. But men have to find their own power as well, to
Mhm.
break away from this toxic masculinity. Like, we can't do everything for them. We're doing so much for ourselves.
Yeah.
How much do we have to give, or how much can we give? They
Mhm.
have to step up. They
Yeah.
have to stand up, I suppose, to
Mhm.
this male toxic figure that is controlling them. as much as it's controlling us. So I don't know how they're going to do that. I don't have answers, but they
Yeah,
have to find it just in the way that we have to for ourselves, if that makes sense.
it does. It does. And again, this is not the answer, but it's an answer is, of course, the stories are there, right? There's that idea of when, in the Celtic Twilight, when Yeats and others were really embracing the mythology and they were really looking to the stories and the creation of a new nation, they were looking to the Fianna and Cuchulainn and these
Yeah.
warriors, right?
Yeah.
And so there is that opportunity to shift and say, but also there's Dagda and Manannán, and there's Avergan. There's other characters in the mythology that want to come forth, perhaps similarly to the way that as women have embraced these goddess figures and others as sources of power and also tenderness. How do we encourage the stories of the good God and others to come forth rather than just the cult of the warrior?
Yeah. Wow. How do we do that? I suppose we have to bring those stories back into the light, don't we?
Yeah.
I suppose a lot of people just think they're all stories, and that's.
Mm.
I think there's in Ireland. I see it in Ireland a lot. Is that people want to move forward and not look back,
Mm.
and the myths just seem too fantastic when you think about the battles and all of that. It's not relevant to life today. We don't have that, but actually, they're very relevant in a lot of ways, as we've just seen from the Boan story.
Yeah.
And we need to bring them back to the light so that people will listen to them,
Mhm.
and they need to be shared.
Yeah.
And it's amazing what you can pick up and what you can learn from just reading between the lines. And I suppose these stories are always evolving.
Mhm.
Every person, every storyteller who told a story is evolving the story. And
Mhm.
maybe that's the good thing about them, because that's
Mm.
how they remain relevant,
Yeah.
is because they're always evolving to the period that they're being told in. And that's all we
Mm.
need to do, is reinvent them for
Right.
for contemporary audiences. And I think that's something that I've seen a lot happening in terms of retelling of the female figures in mythologies, from Greek myths, well, through to Irish as well. People are trying to give these characters back their own voices, and maybe we call them feminist retellings, maybe,
Right.
which is where we're giving them back their own voices and trying to understand it from a female perspective. Because
Mhm.
usually these stories are written from a male perspective,
Right.
because it was always the Christian monks that were writing them down, for example, in Ireland
Yeah.
anyway. So yeah, it's nice to try and get back to how to think about what was this story actually telling before? What was it trying to teach us? Because I think the myths are definitely there. They're not just for entertainment. I think they were there to teach as well. If you think about non-literate communities, where they are using their voices
Mhm.
to tell stories, using their bodies to tell stories, they're educational as well, not
Right.
just entertainment.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we have to look for those lessons, I think, in the mist, and bring them
Mm.
back to people's attention, back into the light.
Yeah.
I think it can be done.
Well, to follow a thread of what you're saying there too is mentioning that, the Christianization of these stories. It's the reason we have these tales, but also what sort of shifts and corruptions happened in the midst of that is that Bowen's story existed long before she became Ireland's Eve, right? Because in her
Mm,
thirst for knowledge, there's that easy sort of parallel that gets drawn. But what was her story before it was filtered through people who had access to the book of Genesis?
yeah.
And I think you're offering us that. Obviously, every feminist retelling, every retelling says, I want to root her back into the land and into the people as they would have existed before the coming of Patrick and his friends.
Mm,
Gives us that opportunity to see her as, yeah, there's a cognate there. I see the connection. but
Yeah.
her desire is older than that single tree in Eden.
Yes, exactly. And that wasn't lost from the stories, although there were dire consequences for her and she ended up losing her life. So and I think I mentioned that at the beginning of the story as well, about how she was given her death in in her search for knowledge. But and that kind of says, well, knowledge is for men only, not really for women. And if you,
Mm,
as a woman, try to educate yourself, then come to a bad end. And it's
mm,
kind of telling that story. But
mm.
the story, Boan's story, existed before Christianity was controlling women.
Right.
So the search was already there for knowledge. And
Mhm.
perhaps it was, we don't know because we weren't around and we don't have any evidence, but perhaps it was more normal in those days for women to be searching for knowledge and
Mhm.
discovering, making discoveries and, educating themselves and educating others. We don't have any evidence beyond what was left to us by the Christians. And I'm actually very grateful to them because the stories have survived.
Of course.
But also, we know from people like Lady Gregory that storytelling was still a very big thing back as far as the 18th, 1900s.
Mhm.
So oral culture was still very much alive.
Yeah.
So we lost a lot, I think, after the famine, probably, and
Mm.
people leaving Ireland. There's probably a lot of stories in the diaspora
Mhm.
where they have kept hold of them because it was
Mhm.
more precious, maybe because it
Right.
was so far from home.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I appreciate that idea. That's similar to what came through when I was talking to Dee Mulrooney not too long ago. That idea of that the diaspora has that culture holding capacity. And that's just always a beautiful reminder, especially for those of us who are flung around the world, that there's value not only in going back to the source of the stories and being in the land and being in the culture as it grows now in this moment, but knowing that there's sort of that, I guess, cross pollination that continues, and
mm,
that as the conversation flows around the world, it enriches. Sort of beginning where we did with this conversation too, and knowing you're thinking about current events in the U.S. as you tell this ancient story and how it also lands for you in this moment living in Ireland.
yeah,
Mm, yeah.
yeah, I love that.
Yes. There's a piece that I wanna make sure we explore in the story because I thought it was so gorgeous, was that idea of after Angus's birth, when Boan goes to the well and she's trying to decide, how will I guess I would interpret it as commune with the waters, will I bathe, will I drink? And that sense that the well knew her and recognized the watery nature of the feminine and her. And you
Mm,
really just made it such a gorgeous, embodied, and again, to use that word, inevitable sort of union between her and these waters, as if they had always been longing to be together. Because I guess it's
yeah,
that sense of if she thirsted for knowledge and thirsted for the well thirsted for her lips as well. And that
yeah,
idea of reciprocity is so profound. And of course, as you named it, the reciprocity ended up being, well, thank you for drinking. We now require your life as the greatest sacrifice.
yeah.
But oh, can you just kind of help us explore this a little more? Help us sort of dip our own hands into these waters and what was real for you as you were writing it?
Well, this whole thing about water and women's connection with water, I think, is something that you can see around the world. And in Ireland, we have this connection of women with the well. There's lots of stories and folklore about that the wells are guarded by she women.
Mhm.
And sometimes, if you go to take water and leave the lid off the well, then the water will erupt and it forms lakes. There's a lot. I live where there's a lot of lakes, so we have a lot of those stories.
Mm.
But they also have the stories of the sovereignty goddess who offers water to the king.
Yeah.
And we also have, you see stories, I think, in your part of the world, there's indigenous stories of women being guardians of water as well. Where I live here, there are lots of lakes. They say there's about, I don't know, one for each day of the year, so 365. That's the folklore. There seem to be, around every bend in the road, there seems to be a lake. So you can't not think about water. But when I moved here to this house, there were no trees. It was my garden. There was just no trees, nothing. And willows planted themselves and just appeared out of the ground. And it's now I'm surrounded by willows and I love them. Willows are very graceful and very beautiful, but they're also connected with water as well. So they grow where there's lots of water in the ground, where the ground is boggy, where riverbanks, lake edges, where water will overflow. And they're quite happy to have their roots and their trunks in water. And I just felt that real connection with the willow and with the water. And it just felt like it felt like a very feminine thing for me. And then you go to the myths and you find it there as well. And in Ireland, a lot of rivers are named after female characters from myths. And there's also a lot of stories about serpents as well, who live in rivers and lakes. And all of them that I've read, apart from one, I think were all female. So this whole connection of water and female in the landscape is a really strong one. And I think it's really important to show that. And yeah, that was just as I was writing the story, that just emerged. It wasn't a conscious thing to do that, but I suppose it was in me. I felt that. And it just emerged into the story and just seemed to fit, just seemed to fit.
Well, that's such a gorgeous illustration of how much beneath the surface work happens when you're doing the myth work and the myth retelling. So just thank you so much for just providing all of these little bits of inspiration from here and imbus from here and a bit of flow from here. And it all comes together, perhaps when one goddess, one mythological character says, "Hey, will you tell my tale?" There's these kind of basic words on the page from the translated manuscripts. Can you bring the everything of where you are and who you are to the story?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, are you in County Cavan? Is that where you are?
Yes.
You are.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, gorgeous. Gorgeous.
Yeah, I think it's a really lovely part of Ireland. It's kind of underrated, I think. It's very beautiful, lots of hills, lovely trees everywhere, and people are really lovely. So, and it's kind of in the middle, so you're so close to everything. Like it's about 35 minutes to Tara, it's 20 minutes to Loughcrew, it's an hour and you're across the border up to all those beautiful places up north. And yeah, it's so easy to get to a lot of significant archaeological sites from Cavan. So I feel never knew that until I moved here. So I
Right.
think I was quite lucky, really, how it all turned out.
Well, it's funny. I think when you and I've spoken previously, I told you I once met a man from Cavan, and he says, "Well, you never hear about Cavan because no one ever leaves because it's so perfect. You just never want to depart."
Yeah. Yeah, I certainly felt that for me. Like it wasn't somewhere that I imagined I would end up living. But once I got here, I've just felt so rooted and comfortable here, and I can't imagine living anywhere else. So
Yeah. Oh, goodness. Well, Allie, this story is so rich. I'm wondering that as we sort of reach near the end of our chat today, is there any part of this tale that you want to bring forth for us or that feels most alive for you right now? I know you wrote it a little while ago. I have a feeling it reveals something new every time you get to tell it again.
yeah, I think, I think for me, how these people of the past are so alike to us. So whether she's a mythical character, whether she's an ancestor, whether she's a goddess, doesn't really matter how you think of her. But
Right.
she was going through things that we're familiar with. So a woman who wanted to make more of herself, a woman who wanted more of her husband's attention, a husband who maybe belittled her a little bit. She found a lover, it's just, and she found the knowledge that she wanted too. I mean, they're all aspects that we can relate to. I think the kind of issues that we still have to deal with today or that we might experience today. And I think to look back over centuries and to be able to make that connection and to feel to touch someone from the past like that, whether it's mythical or a historical person, it's just really, for me, it's really affirming and powerful and makes me feel so much better about my own experiences and makes me realize that looking back is just as important as looking ahead. Can learn so much from the myths.
Yeah. Oh, Allie, thank you so much for bringing this gorgeous, rich story. It feels as if Boan's time is coming as well. Perhaps she and Bridget are holding hands and coming through side by side.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just that I get to keep company with such wonderful storytellers who are keeping her alive. But I'm so grateful to walk with you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me on this great show. Just so honored to be a part of it. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're so welcome. Well, you're the richness and gorgeousness of your writing over on Substack has just captured my imagination for so long that it's just so wonderful to be able to sit down with you and to share your voice with my corner of the world.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you for tuning in to KnotWork Myth and Storytelling. Please subscribe and review the show on your favorite podcast platform, and do share this episode with other lovers of mythology and story. By the way, everyone is a lover of mythology and story, even if they've forgotten. Creating this show is a labor of love, and your support will help me continue to craft and share stories throughout this season and beyond. Please consider becoming a paid subscriber to my newsletter, Myth is Medicine, over on Substack, where you'll find new writing and conversations each week. You can find out more about my writing, my book, our online writing communities, as well as how to work with me as a writing coach at marisagowdy.com. Gratefully, I live, write, work, and record this podcast on the ancestral lands of the Munsee Lenape tribe, whose name means original people. Music on this show is performed by Beth Sweeney and Billy Hardy.